So, good day everyone. Special to our instructor, Mama Hana Pantilion, and to my fellow forestry classmates. Today, I will be discussing our assigned topic, identify the importance and relationship of microeconomics to natural environment. Objectives and methods of microeconomics. Microeconomics is an impressive and bold architecture of thought. Its objective is most ambitious. It attempts to describe, explain, and evaluate almost everything that is going on in the world as far as human behavior is concerned. To achieve this goal, or to at least come as close as possible, microeconomics takes a multidimensional approach, providing a theory of rational individual decisions, a theory of conflict resolution and coordination, a theory of the evaluation of resource allocation, and a theory of public regulation. Given this set of dimensions, microeconomics is fairly comprehensive. It is also quite general. So, microeconomics as a theory of rational individual decisions. It is an essential feature of human life that each autonomous individual takes many decisions every day. This is a burden and a privilege at the same time. There are fundamental and trivial decisions. An example is that most of the honorable readers of the text at a certain point in their lives may have decided to enroll on an environmental studies program of a university. Instead, they could have decided to enroll on a different program or not to go to university at all. Another example is a family deciding on whether to buy a new car instead of traveling abroad in their vacations. These decisions and all others have an important feature in common. The decision maker must choose between alternatives. Alternatives means that realizing one possibility implies that the other possibility cannot be chosen. The decision in favor of a new car, for example, implies that the vacations abroad cannot be realized. At least this is so in the case of the family playing its part in our example. As regards the decision to enroll in a certain university program, the possibilities to do the one and leave the other are rather limited. Some people might go for two university degrees simultaneously, but this is the maximum you can do in most cases. The reason for necessity to choose and therefore being forced to decide is that the realization of an alternative uses up resources. Once these resources are consumed for one alternative, they cannot be used for the realization of the other alternative. These resources can be completely different kinds of different decisions. For example, the resource that forces you to decide between buying the car and going away for vacation is money. The resource that forces you to decide between different university programs is money too, but in addition, it is time. Of course, the fact that the decision in favor of a certain alternative uses up resources wouldn't be worth mentioning if resources were abundant. It is scarcity of resources that adds a painful touch to decision making. Realizing one alternative comes at the cost of not being able to realize the other alternative. It is impossible to have your cake and eat it. These resources can be of completely different kinds of different decisions. For example, the alternative for gun is interpreted to be the cost of the alternative chosen. In economics, it is called opportunity cost. So if microeconomics is a theory of individual decision making, this is a consequence of the central theme of scarcity that have been discussed a while ago. Since economics focuses on the painful aspect that the decision to realize a certain alternative uses up scarce resources, it is easily understood what a criterion for prudent decision making is. In the economic view, a necessary condition for a decision to be prudent is that it does not use up more resources than absolutely necessary to achieve the purpose of the decision. Decisions like this do not imply any waste of scarce resources. They are termed efficient in economics, as has been explained just recently. Aiming to behave efficiently, people shopping for a car or deciding upon their vacations will try to find out which offers provides the best value for their money. Analogously, students try to find out which university program will provide the best return on the invested money and time. Of course, the idea of achieving a certain goal efficiently does not say anything about what this goal might be. Indeed, the criteria according to which a car is chosen and the relative weights of these criteria in the decision-making process might be quite different for different individuals. For some people, fuel efficiency might be most important. For others, size, speed, or prestige effect may be crucial. Similarly, the decision to pursue environmental studies might be driven by different motives. Among these motives might be the prospects of future earnings, personal preferences, or the feeling of moral obligation. So, the second theory is microeconomics as a theory of conflict resolution and coordination. Humans are social beings. On the other hand, each individual competes with other individual for scarce resource. On the other hand, no individual can cope without cooperating with other individuals. So, modern societies are designed in sharp contrast to the Robinson Crusoe scheme. People compete with each other for all kinds of objects of desire, like consumer products, jobs, organ transplantations, and grants to cover the cost of university environmental studies program. So, based from the two pictures, the artwork one by David Dalia Venencia, oil on canvas. This might be the illustration of three economics textbook authors. They all look alike, struggling on whose name will appear first on the cover. Obviously, they are using brute force as a means of conflict resolution. Alternative mechanisms of conflict resolution would be the seniority principle, or sometimes it's as simple as that the alphabet. An alternative and possibly more serious interpretation would be that the painting illustrates the internal creative struggle of the artist. Interestingly, this kind of a conflict, the conflict within one and the same person, is dealt with in the arts, philosophy, as well as in poetry and prose, but not in mainstream economics. In economics, it is assumed that the decision-making process of any individual does not use up emotional or any other resources, but is conducted costlessly. When we talk about conflict in economics, we are most certainly referring to conflict between different individuals. So, artwork 2, Theater Bonn, Germany, Frida Kahlo. In economics, we certainly acknowledge the utmost importance of coordination among individuals for their well-being. However, we take a rather prosaic look at it. The scene from the picture reminds us that there are poetic, if not romantic, alternatives. Here's the author understanding of utmost romance. We believe the photo shows a somewhat far-sighted couple coordinating in jointly reading economics for environmental sciences. Of course, there are many possible ways to solve conflicts between individuals rivaling for scarce resources. Using the terminology that has just been introduced, we might just as well say there are many allocation mechanisms which may be applied. A mechanism which has a particularly long tradition in history of humankind is brute force. However, in the process of society's evolution, humankind became aware that different mechanisms for the regulation of conflicts have different potentials to contribute to human welfare. In this respect, brute force fared pretty badly compared to other mechanisms. Therefore, microeconomics does not pay much attention to brute force as an allocative mechanism. As for conflict resolution, there are many allocative mechanisms which might be considered to arrange cooperation. Among these possibilities is the order of the king of the queen. Another mechanism is a central allocation plan designed by a national bureaucracy. Thirdly, the democratic process might decide on how to coordinate individual behavior by majority voting. Moreover, social traditions and informal agreements may play a role in coordinating. Finally, coordination might be arranged by the market mechanism. So third, microeconomics as a theory of evaluation and resource allocation. Under the first bullet point of this introduction into the objectives and methods of microeconomics, we presented some observations on how microeconomics stylizes individual decisions. Economic agents are taken to choose among alternatives, striving to achieve their goals as well as they can in light of the fact that their resources are limited. We all call this behavior rational microeconomics. What these goals are is left almost completely down to the individual decision maker themselves. So this approach is positive in the sense explained. It is used to describe, thereby hopefully helping to understand and even to forecast individual behavior. However, the approach does not say whether individual behavior is good or bad. An analogous statement holds for what has been said under the previous bullet point. Here we have explained how the market mechanism might coordinate the decisions of different individuals and how it might resolve conflicts about the allocation of scarce resources among those individuals. This is also a positive analysis. We did not say whether the market mechanism does a good job in terms of coordination and conflict resolution. Many microeconomic analyses are confined to the positive approach, but there is also an important branch of microeconomics which is normative. Here, microeconomics tries to assess whether a certain situation is good or bad. This evaluative analysis is not used very much in the area of individual decisions. Modern microeconomics does not teach people about what is good for them. The idea that individuals are entitled to decide upon their own goals, the principle of consumer sovereignty mentioned above, does not leave much room for microeconomic value judgments. This is completely different where the results of social mechanisms, like the market mechanism, are concerned. There, the question arises of whether the result of this mechanism in terms of conflict resolution and coordination are good or bad from the point of view of society as a whole. Of course, to assess whether a job is done well, you need a criterion with which you can measure the quality of the performance. To find such a criterion is much more complicated when the quality of a situation is to be evaluated from the point of view of society as a whole than it is from the point of view of a single individual. As has been mentioned above, the issue concerning the individual decision maker is solved by microeconomics in a stunningly simple way. The decision maker is his or her own judge when it comes to assessing what is good and what is bad. However, when it comes to assessing situations from the point of view of society, we cannot get away as easily as that. The reason is that society is not a single comprehensive decision unit or a person, but consists of many different people. As we have observed above, each of the many members of society might follow his or her own personal goals, and there may be considerable conflicts between these goals. In light of this fact, it is a difficult philosophical question when we ask how criteria might be designed according to which different situations may be assessed from the point of view of society as a whole. It is this issue which we courageously tackle in this subsection. So last, microeconomics as a theory of regulation. Microeconomics uses the idea of social optimality to assess the results that are produced if a society uses a certain allocation mechanism, like the market mechanism. If this mechanism produced results equilibria that were socially optimal, this would be a strong case in favor of the allocation mechanism, under consideration leaving things as they are. On the other hand, if the equilibria is produced by the allocative mechanism a society applies do not meet the criterion of social optimality, the question arises as to whether the welfare of a society can be improved by governmental intervention. It is important to note, however, that governmental intervention is a very comprehensive term, incorporating many forms of governmental intervention. Microeconomics tries to analyze the properties of different forms of governmental intervention and to find designs that best meet the objective of maximizing social welfare. This may sound awfully philosophical. Yes, it is, as will become apparent when we apply these concepts in the subsequent sections. So, to give you a preliminary idea of how this might work, consider environmental problems. A doctoral degree in environmental economics is not needed in order to observe that an unregulated market mechanism will not be able to secure natural resources for this and future generations. It is a safe guess that governmental intervention will be needed to protect the natural environment, and that this protection will improve social welfare. However, there are obviously different forms of governmental intervention that benefit the environment and society. Whether the reader of this book may be located, each will know from their home country examples of different kinds of environmental policy instruments. This includes environmental taxes, environmental subsidies, various emissions trading programs, requirements to apply environmentally sound technologies, and many other forms of environmental regulation. An important economic question is to evaluate these different kinds of environmental policy instruments in terms of their effectiveness and their potential to enhance social welfare. So that this ends my topic, and the next topic will be reported by my co-members. That would be all, and thank you for listening.